on Super Mystery Dungeon has been out for about a month now, and I really wanted to talk about it. I've always been a fan of the Mystery Dungeon series, so I really wanted to give my take on the whole game. First things off, if you have played any of the other Mystery Dungeon games and have enjoyed them, I recommend pick up the new one. It is very faithful to the other ones. It is better than 3, the third one. It is way better than the third one. If it's better than the second or the first one, that is up to debate. I actually will probably get that later in the gameplay part, but this is just first off the story. So to avoid me from rambling on about random nonsense, I actually have a summarize. I took the Bubblepedia summary and I'm looking at it right now because otherwise, if I tried to explain the story to you, I would forget details. I would try to add details in. It is really confusing. So you play as a human and turn into a Pokemon. Big surprise. Shocker, shocker, shocker. You lost all your memories. Shocker, shocker, shocker. I know these are complete new concepts that have never been done before in any Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game ever before. So you wake up, you're attacked by the Behem. They're like silver alien dudes. They're Pokemon 5th gen. If you don't know who they are, that's not a big shocker. They were never they weren't like you. They were rare in the original in 5th gen. I don't think I've ever used them ever or battled against them maybe like once or twice. So anyway, so you run across Nuzleaf and he like takes you in and like, oh, you're being chased. You join me, and you're like, okay. Because if you're being attacked by random alien Pokemon, you're gonna join them. And since you look school age, I don't know. I guess you look young. I guess so. So you get taken and you're getting sent to school. And then your partner shows up, and hands down, best partner in any of the Mystery Dungeon games, in my opinion. Hands down. Lovable, funny, quirky, super energetic, super ready to do anything, and just like so fast paced. The humor, I would say, from the school section of the game is really, really good story wise. It is written like a really good child's cartoon. It is quick paced. The jokes come funny. They have some references. They mention evolution as puberty. They make a TLC joke with the nurse. That made me laugh. I'm like, oh, nice little jab in there. The bad guys are like the bullies almost, which is kind of quirky. The vice principal is this very stuck-up guy who's very strict. The principal is very laid back, and it's like, well, let's kind of the vice principal do its thing, but then steps in when he goes too far. It's very well done. It teaches you the new mechanics of the game. It's very good. I really did enjoy it. It's a little bit hand holding, a little too much. If anything, it's a little too hand holding. But then again, it's trying to bring in anyone into the new game. So that hands down might be my favorite part. It's easily my favorite part of this game, story wise. Might it contests. It wasn't. It's not emotional, but I laughed. There's multiple times going to the Drillbur cave with one of the dares, and just the whole interaction. There is so many I don't like. He tells you like to stop, like, oh, you're not supposed to be here, and your partner goes okay, and then walks right past them, and they don't do anything because they're like, oh, okay. It's also hard to explain, but it's just they know if you play the other games, these are way more funny because they play with your expectations and just run with it. There's a time where Gabite is in the bottom of the cave, and you get tricked into trying to steal his jewels, and he like, oh, he summons the Drillbur to help fight them. And they're like, yeah, we're not fighting, and they just leave. And there's this awkward pause at the end, and I'm like, I just laughed because it's like I expected this is gonna be your new recruits. But the problem is this wears off, and then you start getting your badge. You start doing like the missions, which I'll get into the gameplay what they more are, if they're better or worse. But the pace slows down, and they start getting this ghost, and it takes like one day someone gets abducted, and one day this one guy gets scared, and they're gone for a whole day. And you just do a mission, and then you come back, and it slows down, and then the whole thing you end up making friends with the bullies. That's how the whole side story ends, and it just slows the whole pace down. The whole like side thing with them even the whole ghosting even exists. It doesn't even come back later in the story. Like this, the bad guys, the quote unquote bad guys. There's no really bad guy in this game. That's kind of thing. It really bugs me. There's no bad guy, quote unquote. Something we'll get into later. but it's just so slow. It slows down, and then they go to Lively Town, the Expedition Society, which is the main hub almost. Or you're halfway through the game, and the summarized mentions you go up to Revelation Mountain, which is just a secret location by the village, which doesn't come back until later, but just like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, this thing exists. Because you're still warning about your fact that you lost all your memories, but no one ever seems to care. It's like brought up once in a while, like, oh yeah, do you remember any memories? And you're like, no, and Noseef's like, okay. It's kind of like pushed underneath the rug. So you get to Lively Town, which is a new place. Ampharos, which you met back in the other village, gives you the better badges. And then you get introduced with 7 different people. 6? I don't even remember. Mawel. Actually, hold on. You get introduced to the whole guide, which is Ampharos, Mawel, Jirachi, Weasel, Archin, Debony, Bunnelby, and Swirlix. And it's like, okay. You just get dropped. They just dump all these people on you, and you're like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care who you guys are. You haven't made me care yet. And you just can't just drop exposition on all these guys and expect to care, and you really don't. Till later, you sort of start caring, and then it's too late by then. So the mystery of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon starts popping up that people are legendaries suddenly turned to stone, which is kind of hinted at, throughout the first half of this is halfway through the game right now. Half the game takes place in your starter town, which is called Peaceful something. What's it called? Serene, Peaceful, Serene Village, and then the other half is in Lively Town and your whole Expedition Society. So you're like that, and then you're coming over to the society, and the people are starting to turn to stone. It's like old legendaries and stuff, except for Wailord, which is something also a big deal for some reason. Wailord, the giant whale, turned to stone. So it's like, oh, the giant whale is now stone, which is doing something. So Latios and Latios get turned into stone. So Entei is like, oh, Entei like, I want to figure out who's responsible, and you're like, we don't know. And he's like, is it you? And we're like, what do you think we're doing here? We're like, we could turn, bam, into stone. And we're like, short. Oh, I forgot about the scarves. Your partner gives you scarves. That's important later. Anyway, so Entei, you eventually go to here. And now the scars that you got from your partner, which is basically kind of thrown this, just kind of mentioned. Your partner had them when he was given to his adoptive father. There's a giant turtle. Unless you Squirtle, that actually doesn't make sense. Besides that, my partner was Pikachu. It made no sense, but it's adoptive father, so this guess it doesn't matter. So then you evolve into your highest form. So you reach Raichu if you're Pikachu. If you're Cyndaquil, because I loved using Cyndaquil, and Typhlosion. I believe that's the name. I actually don't know his name. But anyway, so you have the big dudes now, and then you beat Entei, and then you turn back to normal. So now suspicion turns into someone else. It's like there's a message in town says Entei might be turned to stone, and Entei gets turned to stone. So then they're like, oh, there might be ways to reverse this. So you split into 2 teams. Crocodile, which is a giant alligator thing. That's the red and black one. You follow them to the original village, and this says there's on top of the mountain you're back with a Nuzleaf. You're like, oh, let's go to the top of the mountain again. So you go to the top of the mountain, and the crocodile's there. This is really well done. Really good summary. And then you gonna fight, but then you don't fight, and turns out there's a magical pyramid covering water that only a human can break. It's exactly how it sounds. So you're like, well, we should break it, and you're like, this just seems wrong, and you don't have the crocodile slowly charging, even though the other 2 legendary Pokemon, Suicune or Suicune, whatever you pronounce it, Enrico, show up, but still, you break the barrier, and then Nuzleaf turns out to be evil. He turns out the one who turns out petrified to other people, which is okay. There's a twist. There's always that twist halfway through the game. One of the good guys stick with the bad guy. You've got that from the second one. You got that from the third one. It's not really as much of a twist anymore. So you get sent to you get turned into stone. and I was expecting, because they hint at the fact that one your person from your school comes up, follows you, Esper. And I was like, oh, Esper's just gonna come and just give us the water and free us. But no, you have to go through the whole Void Land, which is you sent to when you get turned into stone, which makes very little sense, logically speaking. Like, how does that make sense? How do you, when you get turned to stone, why do you turn into Void Lands? And then you can kind of get killed in the Void Lands. Which, where do you go then? Do you just not exist then? There's like, we're not going to talk about that, but anyways. So it turns out that people for doing the evil is called Dark Matter, and it possessed Yatavel, the Y legendary that destroys everything, Nuzleaf and the Behan Hell, and it tries to destroy you in the dark, the, the Void Lands, and it's like, they're not evil, it's just a magical force that's turns out to be the embodiment of all the darkness and negativity residing of all living things. Yeah. Like, couldn't they just be evil? May they want to rule the world. I'd rather have them just want to rule the world than them be controlled by the embodiment of all of the darkness and negativity residing of all living things. Do you know how dumb that sounds? The embodiment of the darkness and negativity residing in all things. Yeah. So, through the sacrifices of all the other teams, which actually is somewhat emotional. By somewhat, I mean, wow. You're out of the Void Lands. You come back to the regular world. So you go and you meet up with Jirachi and Ampharos. And they're like, oh, we gotta figure out how to save the world. But one BM comes, and he's like, oh, he's not a... I'm skipping through this part because this is really just blur in my memory. VM is not... So, Nuzleaf says, we originally clashed. You are a human who first dealt with the dark matter long ago. With, I believe Mew is explained, not here, but I'll say it anyways, with Mew. And then you were brought back here, and you started to fight them, and then they got rid of your memory, and then you're like tricked into actually being allies. And it's like, oh, it's actually someone good. But I feel like Dusknoir did this like 2 stories ago. But the thing is, it half feels like it wants you to believe one story and wants you to believe another story. Like, the first half of the game is so like parts of it is so good because you've played the other games and it kind of references it and then swaps it and you're like, oh, I was expecting this by deciding this. That's comedy, and then it just kind of borrows it from like the middle part. It like takes good chunks from other games, and it's like, wait a minute, you just made this funny because I knew it. Why is anyways? So you were tricked into breaking the water so he could destroy it. So dark matter could be interrupted, could go. So, but before he could turn into stone, Ampharos and Celebi and Jirachi come in and save you. The harmony scars the scars you got are made from the Tree of Life, which is the opposite of the dark matter. It's a tree of life, good and evil, but not really. There's more like essences of it. And then we go on, and then we're like, oh, but now you gotta go and save the tree because the dark matter is destroying the tree. So one of my favorite and least favorite parts of the game is this weird session where your partner runs after the tree gets pulled out of the ground by dark matter and is trying to be sent into the sun because that's a thing. You can bring a planet into the sun by pulling. I don't know how that works. Just ignore it. But then your partner starts running after it and jumps and fails, and then Celebi comes, gives you a push, and then Jirachi comes, gives you the push, and then your partner, and then you somehow come up and like jumping from rock to rock and just give it a shove. And I'm just like, we have jumped the shark so badly right now. We have jumped the shark like 7 times this whole sequence, and then your partner reaches and then misses and then falls back to earth. It's like we jumped the shark to to unjump the shark. It was the most like built up to absolutely nothing I've ever seen. It's like this is totally improbable. This is just all out the window, and then it's over nothing. It's like why did you even have this cutscene? Why? Why did you even do this? But anyways, so then they somehow called all the legendaries Arceus, Deoxys, Rayquaza, Mega Mewtwo, and it's like, well, I'm gonna stop this, but only the people who wear the scarves can get onto the tree because the concentration of dark matter is so strong. And I'm like, why don't we just give the scarves to you? You're freaking Arceus. You're freaking Deoxys. Just wear the scarves. And it's not like it's attached to it. You just untie it and give it to you. It would work. But no, and then you have to go into their evolution, fully evolved form, and beat stuff up. And they get a dark matter, and you start beating it up. And then it's like, oh, you can't do this. If there's another wave, and petrifies everyone. And so you're the only two left. And then you slowly, like, dramatically punch the shell away from dark matter. And it's like, yeah, the dark. I'm gonna read this. Before the player can destroy dark matter threatens to resurface again in a distant future. Since all Pokemon have darkness in their heart, it can never be truly destroyed. Meh. It can never be completely destroyed. To dark matter's surprise, the partner accepts this outcome because if dark matter is born from everyone's negativity, dark matter is part of this world too. The player and the partner shatter dark matter's core in the final attack, which thanks the player for their actions. Really? Really? Okay. Okay. So now you're like, wait a minute. If the player's like everyone's back to normal, and the player realizes, you're like, wait a minute. I'm the human world, so I'm probably gonna go back to the human world. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, you're just dropping the hint now. This is just like shoehorn. We're just like copying again from the story. So you go out and you like go back to the village. And you're like, well, I'll have to tell my partner. So you go out and your partner's already out, and your partner's on the top of this hill that you could been multiple times before. It's when you got your badges. It's where you got the scarves. It's like really iconic for him or her. Actually, for her, in my case, was a her. So you go up there, and she or he, your partner's sitting there, and he reveals that he's actually Mew, which I applaud. That I actually applaud because I actually did not see that coming. I did not see that twist coming. I was not expecting a second twist. So instead of you going back, Mew, your partner, has to leave. So your partner slowly engulfs into a ball of light and leaves as he explains that he brought you and him back to do this again. Actually, he's a reincarnation. It's a little bit false. Since they failed last time, you were the same people. So you wiped your memory. It's not Nuzleaf who did it, but I don't know why Nuzleaf thought he did then. Why he made up the lie then, I don't know. So then, Rise of the Sky, the end of the main story. I thought it was a good ending. Didn't see the twist coming. I threw something across the room in shock. That's why I react to shock and just throw stuff. And then the post story happens. It's literally 3 dungeons. You visit X2. X2's like, oh, I know where Mew is. You go and find Mew. Mew says, oh, I'm not the same Mew, but I'll follow you. Do some missions. You have this weird sequence where you forget memories and then slowly remember them. So it's like you're like randomly in Serene Village. And you're like on the same hill where Mew left, where your partner left. And you're like, what happened? Where's Mew? And then you're like, wait, I can't remember. And you start going back, like, wait a minute, he was sick. And then wait a minute, we were saying that we were coming out here because he was destroying the view. And then you go back to the headquarters and you're like, wait a minute, we got his ransom note. And so you need to just go off and get him. And then I'll have to read this one. And then Doctor's note. Turns out the Nuzleaf and BM are responsible because they want to prevent the dark matter coming back to the world because somehow the dark matter is making Mew sick. And seemingly faded away. Reminded of the partner's departure, the player refuses this, not wanting to say goodbye again. The player's harmony scarf begins glowing, combining with the light surrounding Mew, restoring the partner. And that's it. That's it. That's the end. It's 3 dungeons. Your partner's back. That's it. I'm like, really? That's the post story? 3 dungeons? That's it? The sad thing is, probably the most emotional, like, sad-wise ever got was at the very beginning of the part of the game. Where you start talking to the partner, you start becoming friends, and then you word something just in the wrong way that upsets the partner. Like you're trying to say, like you're not a, you can be over energetic and too excited sometimes, but I don't mind that. And they don't hear the I don't mind that. They just hear you're too energetic and you're kind of bothersome. And they take that so hard. And what hurts the most is after like you have like 5 days in a row, your partner comes and you say, "Hi, let's get ready to go." And you're like, "Okay, we'll go to school." The first day where your partner does not show up hurt the most. That would hurt me because it's like, oh, just the fact you basically crushed him, your partner, so much. That hurt the most. I think that was the most emotional part of the story for me. Was right there. That just moment. Because that's so relatable. I think that was like the best, one of my favorite parts. I say chapters 2 through 8, hands down the best chapters in the game. Everything else is kind of the twist. Yeah, the second twist. I enjoyed the ending. The post story can just go die in a hole. Post story, heck no.